Three, two, one, ghost. Hey, everybody. Welcome to 321 Ghost. I'm your host with the silent G, Kyle, and as always, joined by my pal Natalie. Hey, Natalie, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing good. Boy, I think we've said this on a different episode, but I hate camping, and there's something especially just off-putting about camping movies or cabin movies, because generally, I mean, you can camp without a cabin, but a cabin is definitely you still are in the generally in the middle of nowhere. So just being in the woods, it just doesn't sit right with me.
Would you consider being in a cabin camping, though? It's a house with running water and electricity.
Okay, well you spoiled that
Running
part. Are you
water.
are you are you going to be drinking that water? Are you going to be using that water in
No,
that cabin? No,
no.
absolutely not. Before
Normally.
and especially before I get ahead of myself, hey everybody, we're talking about 2002's cabin movie, Cabin Fever, written by Eli Roth and Randy Perlstein and directed by Eli Roth. Um, if you watched that Under the Radar remake that came out like 2 years ago, I'm sorry, you need to just stop and rewatch the other one. I'm sorry. I I forgot that remake existed until you pointed out,
Mm.
like, should we have specified which one we were doing? Because usually, if there is, we'll put like a date on it, unless it's
Hmm.
like a real obvious, we're doing this one. Like if we're doing Nightmare on Elm Street, like the likelihood is that we're not doing the Jackie Earl Haley Nightmare on Elm Street unless we specify that. And I don't
Yeah,
know why we would.
no. The reason why I said that is because when I realized that this movie came out in 2002, I was like, oh, this just came out like 10 years ago. And I was like, no, it didn't. Then I realized that the other one, when you search for Cabin Fever on any streaming service, they both come up real quick and they're only less than 15 years apart. So at that point, I was like, oh, maybe you would watch the wrong one. But if you did watch the newer one, the remake, which I have seen, I'm so sorry that you wasted your time watching it. This one is much better. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw that out there.
I didn't know that you saw the remake. I haven't seen it.
Hmm.
Um,
It's not worth watching.
Was Eli Roth involved in that in any way outside of producing?
No, so I actually looked into it when this remake came out because I was so curious as to why they would make a remake that's so similar. So I watched it and then was like, whoa, this is the same movie. It's just slightly, I shouldn't say slightly, it's very tonally different. And they took out maybe a couple of the more problematic parts of this movie and
There's a
corrected
lot.
that. Yeah, so they corrected those things, but it doesn't make up for how lifeless that film is. So basically, someone else reached out to Eli Roth and was like, "Hey, we want to remake Cabin Fever with your exact script." And that's that. And he was like, "Okay, I'll be the executive producer." And that was it. So some of the dialogue, like the dialogue's different. The biggest change is that the Winston's character is a female instead of a man, but they're the same exact character. So they tried to make the characters more likable, which makes them more boring. I I really didn't have any enjoyment watching it. I've seen it once, I'll never watch it again, and I would not recommend it to anyone.
Does it still have like the weird, like offbeat sense of humor that this movie has?
That's the thing. They keep some things about, like they keep, like for instance, Dennis yelling out pancakes. They keep that, but anything that's like weird about it, they removed. So then you're just kind of like, what? What's happening? Like, so there's no there, it's like very joyless is the best way that I can put it. So even like some of the things in this movie that are problematic, like I see like where they're trying to go with it, and it like at least adds character and something interesting to the movie in some ways, but like in the newer one, it's just yeah, they changed the deaths for some of them slightly, but for the most part, it's a shot for shot remake.
Yeah, I think I'll probably pass on that one,
You
but
should. I would recommend the sequels before that one,
there's
and they're
sequels
not
to
great.
this?
There's two, and they're direct to video. And I will admit, I did have a little bit of a good time, I think, with the second one, but I would not recommend them to other to anyone. But before you watch the remake, I would definitely watch those.
Well, this one definitely has direct involvement from Eli Roth, right?
Hmm.
The story is from him. I guess he was working on a horse farm in Iceland, and there's some rotten hay and got a little bit of a skin infection. And I guess it was
Mm.
like on his face too. So there was, when he was like trying to shave, he saw it. So
Ooh.
it's not like that famous part came out of nowhere. I feel like there's
Hmm.
two absolutely famous parts from this movie, and then we've mentioned them both already: the pancakes and the leg
Hmm.
shaving.
Yeah.
um and I guess also I was looking through the IMDb trivia on this, and I guess also some strange, more than mere coincidental number of people that have worked on this movie also have just some random history with a skin infection of some sort. So
Mm.
maybe I mean, I appreciate the lived experience that was brought to the set, I suppose, in that regard. So maybe you get a more of a authentic presentation of this. Probably not, though.
Yeah, the idea of anything having to do with skin and in the way of like of some sort of infection to me is even scarier than like a stabbing. Like I don't like the thought of skin just like corroding. Like it looks very gelatinous in this, like it like
Yeah.
congeals and then kind of just like comes off, and that is oof, it's hard to watch. That's why this movie, it does body horror really well.
One interesting thing is technically no one dies from this disease in this movie. Maybe Ryder Strong does, because you don't know exactly how he dies. He's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
dumped on the side of that creek or
Mm-hmm.
river or whatever. But I thought that was kind of interesting. Usually it's people beating each other to death, or, getting eaten by a dog or shot or
Yeah,
some sort,
that's true. That's true.
But one thing I really want to, I'd like to hand out an industry legend award if you don't mind.
Okay.
Mm, if I haven't brought it up yet. Um, Now, not to knock Nathan Barr, who does the majority of the music for this. The score's fine. Actually, there's some parts that I like quite a bit.
Yeah, me
But
too.
I was watching this movie, and I hadn't seen this movie. Gosh, it's probably been, I'd say, at least 10 years more since I've seen this movie. But I guess I just forgot that Angelo Badalamenti did music for this, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to this and I'm like, this sounds so like Twin Peaks. And it
Mm-hmm.
turns out, oh, it's the guy from Twin Peaks that did a couple different musical scores on this. And you
Have
can
fun.
totally tell listening to it. And it, now granted, I wish he just did the whole score, or at least maybe they laid off the like really shitty like rock music. Oh my God. The early
Yeah.
aughts, I've brought this up before, is just culturally absolutely the worst moment in American history
Yeah.
in terms of like a lot of pop culture, music, especially like popular music.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. Ugh. I mean, outside of, well, I guess this is like a year before Speaker Box The Love Below. So I don't know. And there's some fun indie albums for the time, but and it was hard
Yeah.
because we were in high school, so it's weird because I think it's terrible, but also I connect with it on such a nostalgic level too.
Yeah,
But
same.
having that music from him, like almost, and I don't know, maybe I'm giving this movie too much credit, and I don't think it's a necessarily deep analysis here, but watching this movie again and listening to those musical bits, scores, what have you, sorry, really kind of recontextualized the movie for me and made me appreciate it much
Hmm.
more than I had before. Um, because I think about the music and all the other kind of, base level kind of Twin Peaks comparisons, right? You're in
Mm-hmm.
this small town, every character is a weirdo, and
Yeah.
nobody like reacts to each other in a way that is realistic. Like I feel like
Yeah.
this movie really throws realism out the window. Like I would almost like I could watch this movie and believe it. Not that I think it'd be a great plot point, but I could totally believe that they, hit a deer and got in a car crash and they all died. And this is just some dream state that they're all
Yeah.
in where
Yeah.
nobody's acting right. Everybody's like just so off-putting and weird. And then even the
Mhm.
characters, like the five of them don't like they just don't even like react towards each other like real people. Like
Mhm.
granted, I'm like, this movie's really people speak really aggressively towards each other, especially in like the first half hour. You're like, oh my gosh, all these slurs. And
And
people
yeah,
talk,
in the first half hour especially,
yeah.
it feels so 2002. Like you're getting the N word, you're getting the R word, you're getting just that like everything's gay. I forgot how much people said that, like how frequently they said it until like when I watch every time I watch this movie, I'm like, yeah, people really did throw that around quite a bit.
Don't you feel though, like as the action ramps up, I feel like that those words aren't used quite as much anymore. I feel like it's really condensed as in this opening like 20 minutes as we're getting to know everybody, which is like really
Yeah.
like I guess if that it's intentional, it's really setting the stage for you to really hate all of them and be happy that they all die.
I would hope, and this is me giving Eli Roth probably too much credit as always, but I would hope that he intentionally is writing these characters to be unlikable so that no matter what happens to them, you're cheering for it. You're excited for anything bad that happens to them. Because if you think about it, if these are likable characters and the shit that happened to them, it would be a really sad movie. So instead, it's just kind of cringy and you're like, ugh, but it's fun to watch these terrible things happen to them, I think.
I agree. And I think that is a staple of horror movies, right?
Mhm.
Um, Especially when you have like five college aged or teenagers in the woods and something's awful is happening to them or someone's stalking them
Mhm.
or whatever, which I get. And also, I mean, I think it's known that Eli Roth like borrows heavily or pays homage heavily, to the classics,
Mhm.
70s, 60s, 70s, 80s movies.
Yeah.
Um, I agree. But yeah, but yeah, I think it was just so strange where I felt like almost like as it was ramping up, like I had noticed that there was like a sharp decrease in all the
Yeah.
slurs and awful language, and everyone was just acting weird, and then also panicking because everyone's like flesh was coming off. But I felt like I could take a breath and be like, oh, here now I can just enjoy this without like I felt like the movie got more enjoyable once the
It
characters stopped doing that shit.
it definitely does. And I wonder if because okay, once things start getting stressful, because cabin fever works two ways in this case. It's a literal thing that they can pass that's a like physical ailment, but also like cabin fever is a psychological thing that people refer to, you know. So I'm wondering
You love a good
if
pun and a good double entendre.
I do, and like that's one of the reasons why this movie one of the many reasons why this movie works really well for me. But when I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, naturally, if you're in a stressful situation, you don't know who's infected, what's going on, how it's passed from person to person, you're going to start making wild decisions. For instance, locking up fucking Karen in the barn as soon as they find out that she's sick.
Poor Karen.
But, but they're complete assholes before any of this happens. So I think that he maybe had to show them just being annoying, unlovable people before they start making all the wild decisions for just survival. Because once you put people in a situation where they have to do whatever they can to survive, anybody can be a real asshole. Whereas when they were happy and having a good time, they were still terrible. They didn't want to invite that guy to their bonfire, and then all of a sudden he pulls out a giant bag of weed, and they're like, "Oh no, no, man, it's cool." Like they're fake as fuck. They're not nice people. Their feelings for each other are fleeting. Like they're a fucking mess. So I think that it shows two different ways of them being assholes, but it's good to establish that they're not great people beforehand. I still think they're so entertaining to watch, though.
I would say all the characters, maybe main characters except for Karen, like still don't feel like real people. Like nobody, especially like a guy like Bert. Like, what is Bert doing in this
Bird
group?
is a child.
How does he just react? Like, I think there's like one point where like, I don't know. He just like yells for no, his response is, shut up, you fucking slut, or whatever. To
Oh,
like,
I wrote down all of Bert's indiscretions
it's
in
terrible.
in order.
And
So I'm ready.
okay, and I would argue like, I feel like there is sometimes where I don't know, at least I think the movie wants me to sympathize with at least some of the characters, and we'll start with Paul. Um,
Wait, before we even dig into Paul, because Paul does a lot of this,
uh-huh.
we need to go back to this cabin topic real quick. If you were in a situation where you were staying in a remote cabin in the middle of nowhere, would you be drinking that tap water? Slash, do you
No,
ever drink tap water?
no, absolutely not. I do not drink tap water in
No.
general. And
In
also,
my own home, I don't drink tap water.
in a situation like this, and I don't know why it's uh, you even like when he pours the glass of water, like it does not look clear.
No, there's like a chunk of something in the bottom of the glass. You
Oh
can
my
see
God.
it.
And then, first of all, like maybe if they mentioned like once and then it was in a cut scene that like, like, oh fuck, Bert, you were also supposed to get water. And he's like, ugh, I only have two hands, how to get the beer. Like it was something like that to even explain.
Yes. Yeah, I
Because I
agree.
don't see any bottles of water anywhere,
Hmm.
right? Or any like tubs of water. Um, yeah, oh my God, of course. No, I'd absolutely not drink that water. I wouldn't even want to take a shower in there or even like brush my
I'd have
teeth with
to.
that water.
Oh, yeah. Mm.
Oh, I would just, yeah, rinse myself. I just remember a time I went camping. This was years ago. I think just even normally, just in lakes, you want to be careful and you wouldn't want to drink straight from that water, even if there was or wasn't some dead dude with a skin disease floating around in there. Because, like, first of all,
You never know. He could be
it's a
up,
fit,
he could be upstream.
it's a straight up fish toilet,
Uh,
and fish die in that shit all the time and just float around until they decompose and other fish eat it and shit. And then
and
they
other
shit out
animals.
oh my gosh. Yeah. So no, thank you.
Okay, I just had to make sure that we agreed on that too, because we're anti-cabins, anti-camping, anti-tap water.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Paul.
Paul.
Um, I feel like if anybody, the movie tries to portray him as a empathetic protagonist, but I don't know. Like he's portrayed as like the nice guy, right? Played by Ryder Strong.
Mm, love him.
Famously, right? Sean Turner from Boy Meets World.
Ah.
Now, I was trying to think, did anyone else from that show end up in like movies or like move on from that and have success somewhere else? Because I feel like outside of Jack Lawrence, and Jack Lawrence
Mm-hmm.
did not do it on his own. You need brotherly love, right? You got to have your brothers with you
Yeah.
to make that work. Yeah, I couldn't think of anybody. Like, no, I guess there was the kid that ended up in Rilo Kiley, right? And Ethan Suplee. So like all the supporting cast, right? But yeah, I couldn't think of anybody, and I couldn't think of any other
No.
movies Ryder Strong is in outside of this. Do you? Or can you
Yeah.
think?
This is the only thing that I'd seen him in outside of Boy Meets World, but I mean, Boy Meets World was such a big part of our generations growing up. Like, I feel like I've watched him in a million things a million times, because of Sean. But okay, here's my hot take on both Paul and Karen, but maybe I'll stick with Paul if you don't mind.
We'll do Karen
Because
after.
Yeah. What I thought is you're building it to look like your classic kids go into the cabin situation where you've got the two that are nonstop fucking. That's all they care about. You've got like, even like in the car, like Marcy's grabbing his dick. Um, and then they're like snuggled up, like that stark difference. And then it's like a will they, won't they kind of thing. And they present that narrative to you really quickly, but then they almost immediately like ruin it for you because you think like, oh, Karen's going to be all sweet and, rejecting Paul for whatever reason. But then she starts talking about like, being with a bunch of frat guys for 5 days, like, fucked up out of her mind. So you're like, oh, wait, maybe she's not like as innocent and cute as she seems. So they kind of feed you this idea and then they just reveal to you slowly that Paul's actually a piece of shit, like a peeping Tom, like sexual assaulter, like so many things like that are just like it's so and eventually a murderer. So like he's not really the protagonist that you think he's going to be. And I feel like they squished that pretty quickly. So I think that's Eli Roth kind of like fucking with us.
He, yeah, gets really comfortable with killing people, especially
Oh,
killing people he
fast.
doesn't necessarily have to. I don't think he needed to kill all like the sheriff at the end, or I think that's who he kills. Um, with the little pokey stick that Bert carved earlier.
Yeah.
I yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Like, yeah, they try to make this like whole kind of cutesy kind of situation, but like, no,
Hmm.
he sexually assaults her,
Yeah.
and would
He's
have
so
kept going.
desperate too. Like
Oh,
in the beginning, like the way that he's asking her questions, I'm like, are you 13?
ugh.
Like he's so immature in his approach. Like I can see why Karen's like, no thanks.
And you're led to believe he was the second to last of the main characters to live. He ends up getting dumped in the river afterwards after that weird hospital situation.
Hmm.
But also, yeah, like very, I guess David Lynchian or like I don't know, but having like yeah, just having like the random like rabbit like giving the kid pancakes in the hospital there
I
as
don't
he's having
know
that delirious
what
dream.
that is. Yeah.
Why are they doing this? Feels so unnecessary.
Yeah.
But he would have gone through with sexually assaulting her in her sleep unless she or if she didn't have that fucking like part of her thigh missing and like melted
Well,
off.
I guess we'll just get into this because this is a hot topic for this movie. Every
Yeah.
time I watch it, I think to myself, I forget this scene and I'm like, I don't forget that it exists, but I'm like, was Karen actually asleep or was she awake? Because, like when you're a couple, if you're like a couple and you sleep together every night and have someone initiating, wanting to do something sexual or any type of intimate act, like you're going to have to reach for somebody when they're sleeping every now and then. But that's because you're together. They are not together.
Yeah.
So for him to just go down the panties is not okay while she's sleeping because we saw how she reacted when he kissed her. So she wasn't into it, obviously. You don't just like roll out of a kiss, like you want to keep going.
Yeah.
So she's definitely asleep and maybe even unconscious because he doesn't know even how sick she is at that point, which still doesn't make it okay. But I think she's actually like unconscious and that takes her back into consciousness because it was probably extremely painful.
I guess the only like sigh of relief I could get from that scene was I was like really afraid because I could not remember if he got the blood on his hands from like reaching down her underwear, but they make it clear it's her thigh, like her inner thigh,
Yeah, but
not her genitals.
I think he was fingering her thigh and
Oh
he
yeah.
thought it was something else, which also
Ugh.
like Paul, you're not doing a great job here. Like just so many red flags.
Really adding yourself like you don't know what you're doing, Paul. And
Yeah,
just
so
being a creep.
Yeah, it's a lot. Paul's a creep. And then later on he's like creeping on that girl in the window. Like there's so much going on and you still have time to be a peeping Tom. You know you're a real piece of shit when you can take time out of your day in a crisis situation to creep on someone through their window.
Well, let me ask you this. If you're in the situation, people are dying, you need to get help, you run up to this house and then you run up to like the back yard and their large kind of windows or
Mhm.
whatever, and you walk up and you see a naked woman in the bed. Do you at least try to like wave? Because that's
I
an
would pound
uncomfortable
on the
situation.
window. I would just pound on the window. Like you're looking for someone. Like it doesn't matter if they're naked, the window's open. I need you now. Like I don't have time to find your fucking front door. Put some clothes on, girl. Let's call 911. Like
Yeah.
that would have been the appropriate way for him to react or to just be like, "Oops," and go and find the front door. But he didn't do that.
And then even then, like I feel like there were a lot of attempt or well, lack of attempts to explain the situation coherently enough to
Uh-huh.
get people to stop wanting to shoot at you. Both, it's almost like in a lot of ways, Henry and who we'll bring up later, Paul take a very similar journey in just not knowing how to just communicate with someone without freaking them out and being covered in blood and shit. But boy, let's move on to Karen.
Yeah.
Now I feel bad for her the most probably.
Oof. She gets it the worst, for sure.
Um, Again, even Karen, she's just like at first, I remember like earlier when they're meeting the people in the store in the town,
Mhm.
you know, she was like really upset of people using the N word, but then like
Mhm.
uses the R word in the same or like in this almost in the
Oh
same breath
yeah.
or in the next scene. And you're just kind of like, Karen, you need to fucking stop. You're being a real Karen right now. I do feel like they could have just left her in that bedroom and not unless it was like the only access to like that bathroom was through that room. I couldn't get a good idea of the layout of that cabin,
I mean,
but
they probably didn't want to go back into that bathroom. It seemed like each bedroom had its own bathroom.
dang, that's a good situation for how just filthy the water is.
Yeah, they
You
were
can't
like,
use
let's
any
just
of them.
put plumbing everywhere,
Oh my
everywhere.
gosh.
Yeah, Karen, I think what's interesting about Karen is she just straight up ignores Paul when he's like talking, trying to like confess his love to her. Like he'll start like a whole speech or like monologue with her, and she's just like, let's go swimming. Let's take
Cool story, bro.
pictures. Let's do whatever. Like she's like, let's do anything else but hear this. Like I think for how annoying Bert is, he actually like hits the nail on the head when he says like you really like her and she knows she can use that to control you. And I'm like, "Damn, for how dumb you've been this whole fucking movie, like he nailed their relationship perfectly." So, I think Karen is kind of like leading him on and kind of being a tease and being kind of like just tell him no. You can tell he's trying to confess his love to you. Just be like, "I'm not into it, dude." Like, leave it.
Maybe if he was a good enough kisser, she'd be like, okay, all right, let's try it out.
Yeah. Cause can you
Yeah.
imagine like you're like they're making out and he's like waited for this moment for so long. And she's like, I'd rather be in this disease infested water
Yeah,
than make
do
out with
that.
you on this raft.
Yeah. That being said, ooh, that's it feels real mean putting her in that shed like that and just like
Oh,
that dirty ass mattress.
with no
Now,
lantern. We didn't have a lantern anywhere in this cabin.
it's so awful.
Fucking
But
dark.
and what fucks me up so much, it's not even yeah, like the skin peeling and stuff, that's bad.
Oh.
But oh, when you've got like fucking worms and bugs and shit like eating your flesh like
Oh.
that and just rotting. Oh my God, that fucks me up super hard. That's worse. That
Yeah.
might be worse than being eaten by a dog, but eaten by a dog sounds pretty bad and we'll get there.
Yeah.
But
It Karen gets it the worst for sure because she gets abandoned by the group really quickly and they straight up lie to her. Like they're like, oh, we're gonna be outside with the gun. Someone will be here with you all night. And then they immediately go right back into that warm cabin.
Immediately.
Yeah. And start like checking, each other for any, sores or anything like that.
Oh,
And that's just fucked. Like they should have left somebody out there with her. Like that way if she's like, "Hey, I'm thirsty. Hey, I want a light." Like she literally they gave her like a blanket, that cot thing, and then some cigarettes. And we're like, "You'll have light by by cigarette fire."
and she gets it the most in terms of like this flesh peeling away because at the end it's like her
Oh.
full fucking like you see her like her teeth and her gums and shit and all that's and
I would have just been yelling out like, "Can somebody please just kill me? Like somebody just shoot me in the head. Come on." Like
yeah,
he was
there's
out
no
there for
coming
like
back from
over a
that.
day.
Ugh. And yeah, and then she's the first one to get it. Um,
Hmm.
and again, just from drinking that water. She's the only one that I see drinking the water. I guess
Hmm.
Bert does just a little bit.
Hmm.
And I don't remember when Marcy was drinking it, but or how she got
I'm
um
assuming she was doing a lot of cooking. So I'm assuming that at
maybe.
some point while she was cooking, she used water. Because remember, at some point she says, maybe we should just all prepare our own meals. So maybe she ate her food and they all didn't.
So on to Marcy, not the first Power Ranger
Mhm.
to be in a horror movie about a cabin.
I knew you were going to bring up her being a Power Ranger.
So there you go. I didn't see her season though. I mean, of course, I kind of bailed out after the first couple seasons,
I
right?
have
Because
seen her on Power Rangers with my son.
how is she?
Yeah, she's fine. I mean, as good as all the acting on Power Rangers needs to
Yeah.
be.
And then the also I forget the name of the woman from it's also in Power Rangers. It was in Cabin in the Woods, which we'll probably cover at some point
Yeah,
in our Cabin
probably.
series, unofficial
Yeah.
Cabin series. Um, she's also in Not Another Teen Movie.
Oh, yes. I love Not Another Teen Movie.
Yeah, it's so like I say I really like Not Another Teen Movie, and I feel like it's smarter than a lot of those parody movies, but I'm sure it's
It's
really
not.
rough.
It's so,
Yeah.
but it's really fun though.
I
It's a
mean,
good time.
even her scenes, like, well, of course, 'cause she's naked the whole movie and not another
Yeah.
teen movie.
I think her name's
Um,
Areola.
oh my gosh. There was that bit where it's like, yeah, I mean, like, ultimately it's dumb, but like the bit where like the subtitles like move out of the way to show her
Yeah.
chest, when she's talking, because when she isn't
Yeah,
speaking English.
I
Oh my
love it.
gosh. Um, I was looking through the IMDb trivia, and it's so funny. Or not funny. It's just kind of off-putting and weird how sometimes they share these stories of. So basically, she had just come off doing Not Another Teen Movie,
Mm. So they were like, "We know
and
you'll do nudity."
yeah, and I guess they like her and Eli Roth like had it out like more than a few times about like him wanting her to show more, her being very reluctant to do that, and not being just
Mm.
known for being naked in all the movies she's in.
Mhm.
And even then, I'm like, she's like already like at least showing her breasts a couple times. And I guess
Yeah.
like he wanted her to be fully naked and show her ass as well. And there was like this. The way IMDb like frames it is like, oh, thankfully they came to, like a thoughtful
Yeah.
medium, you know,
Like, so she said no, and he finally was like, "Okay."
and
Like,
she's like, I'm only willing to show this much. And they like said like they only showed like 1 inch of her ass and made sure that they measured it and like taped the blanket to her so it only showed that much. And you're just like, and then ironically, she, said she'd be topless for another scene too. So and I'm just like, ugh, it's just all that just read so gross to me. And
yeah.
you're just like, oh, this is still how we perceive this. And also I don't know, like just that ickiness, they're not asking any of the dudes to do this, right?
Yeah.
So
And in the like at
shitty.
that time, like there have been so many terrible times for women, even to this day. But being a teenager in that time of the early 2000s, I feel like it was one of the more toxic times for like body image and how you ate, like how it just also how like these characters were perceived in films, because even Karen, like she's not naked, but you get a really good long shot on her body in a bikini. um and like these movies have all that, but that conversation of, well, you did this once, so obviously you'd be willing to do it again. And it's like, no, like, in Not Another Teen Movie, like that's the whole fucking joke, is that she's just walking around naked, and she agreed to do that and knew that that would be the joke of the movie. Whereas in this, she, is having that active conversation. It should just be like, hey, are you willing to show nudity? Are you willing to show your breasts? No? Cool. Let's move on. So that, I feel like, was just it's just a really like rough time. And her character is, the more promiscuous one, like of the two, and all of that. So that's also a big, she's known for her boobs, that actress. She is like, a lot of people are a fan of her chest. Um, that goes without saying. And I think Eli Roth knows that and was like, oh, can we bank on this? Which, he's still a piece of shit. Like, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
He is the type of guy that like thinks he's like really forward thinking and woke, but like is not at all.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you on that. Um, or at least be like, okay, fine, then I'll grab my agent. We will renegotiate my contract if
Yeah.
if I'm even willing to do something like that. But I
Mhm.
don't know. I think of, I think we were talking about, Barbara Crampton's experiences, making
Mhm.
movies in like the 80s and just being like, and thinking that like, oh, that was just the 80s. And like, granted, like, sure, this movie's 23 years ago, but still, it's just, you know, still in the
Yeah.
2000s, we're doing this and we're still treating people like this. It's very weird
Well, and
and
two,
unfortunate.
I think that, and like I've said this before on this podcast and in conversations that I've had with people, I love nudity in movies. I love sex scenes in movies. I want to see as much as I can see, for everybody, not just for women, for everybody. I want to see it all. We want
Right,
to see the
right all up
dicks.
that butthole. I want to see
Yeah,
like
I want to see all of it, close ups. Um, but part of that is that actor being comfortable and willing to do that. And I think that there is space to have that negotiation and a conversation in a safe space where you're like, these are the things that I'm willing to do, and these are the things that I'm not willing to do. And even if you were like, are you sure you wouldn't consider doing this? And you say no again, I think that that's fine. I think that there can be like a negotiation and like a conversation about it, but where you draw the line, and it's the same thing in a relationship, is if that person says, no, I don't feel comfortable doing this, you fucking back off and you don't do it. So I think I'm not a man, but maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think from the male perspective, they think that they're having a respectful negotiation, and really they're pushing women and implying that if they don't do it, it's going to make the movie worse. It's going to make their career fail, all of those things. And from the female perspective, like they're seeing it for what it is. So there's this like, I'm sure there's a lot of, malicious intent too. But I think that there's guys like Eli Roth where he's like, what? We're just having a negotiation. Like that's totally normal, not realizing that he's going out of his way to make this person uncomfortable, and it basically sexualize everything that has to do with her role. So even the shots of like she walks up to a house and like the
yeah.
shot is like low down, it's like right at her ass, like, because stuff like that I find funny, but that one to me I was like, okay, this is just stupid and egregious and completely pointless. Like things like that will kind of rub me the wrong way. So I feel bad for her that she had to deal with that, because I think she's great in this movie and I think she's a beautiful woman. Like I remember seeing her in high school and was like, why can't I be tall? Um, but I do like her character a lot. Like I like her
Yeah.
personality the most, I think, out of everyone because she shows weakness and like, yeah, she does still send Karen to the barn, but she also like she's probably one of the more like empathetic characters out of the group, I think.
That leg shaving scene. Um,
Ooh.
First of all, is it common to shave your legs after sex?
Okay. Can we go back to the sex though?
Sure.
Okay. I love, love, love. And this is maybe part of the reason why I like her because she's like, we're in a life or death situation here. Like, do you ever just want to like fuck the person that's just right next to you? And I'm like,
My
yes,
boyfriend
girl.
ran off and ditched me.
Yeah, he ran off and ditched her. They're probably already all sick. So who cares? But where Marcy loses me is Paul asks her, "Do you have protection?" And she says, "Don't worry, I'm healthy." Okay, just because you recently got tested for STIs doesn't mean that you don't have this fucking waterborne virus. Like,
I thought it was kind of funny to frame it that way too. Like, I'm healthy. And you're just like, well,
yeah,
I don't know.
so bad example there, but yeah, shaving shaving your legs after sex, yeah, is an interesting one. Maybe she just very much of the early 2000s. She's like, I can't have that stubble even coming back for a second. She shaves them midday, you know?
Ooh,
But that bath scene is memorable.
yeah, that's rough. I guess I just wouldn't. I guess I would maybe try to not shave over that, even if, like, yes, I want to shave my legs, sure, but also I've got these open sores on this one part of my leg, so I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to shave around that. But oh, geez, that is
I
rough to
thought
watch.
I thought that she didn't know that they were there because the first stroke that she takes over the
The other
like where her
part,
like the yucky open sores
ugh,
part is still like a little bit like more just irritated skin on the top, but I'm like, there's no way she doesn't feel that.
right? Oh,
So I think she's just in shock or having, just a moment of being just totally traumatized and doesn't even realize what she's doing. But that scene is branded into my brain and gives this movie, like, honestly, like a whole fucking boo for me because I think about it often when I shave my legs. Every time I accidentally cut my legs, which isn't often because I've been doing it for a long time, but when I do, I think of Marcy as I see that blood in the water and I'm like, ugh, oof,
oof.
no. And that cheap drugstore pink razor that she's using too, those blades. Have you ever felt one of those blades on your skin, Kyle?
Yeah, no, they're terrible.
Oh, they're terrible. So, yeah, it's pretty rough, but I do enjoy when she comes out of the shower. I love that bright blood red robe with all the blood on her legs. It looks really good.
Well, it looked really good to that dog. Because
Dr.
oh
Mambo?
boy, Dr. Mambo. Yeah, that's pretty rough getting eaten alive. Her and Karen get the worst deaths.
Yeah. Why is Dr. Mambo so vicious?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess if Dr. Mambo always had a taste for blood or was infected, and I guess like
No, because
I
we know
don't
it kills
know.
animals too.
Yeah.
And how did he not get infected after just eating all these dead people?
And you assume he would have eaten Grim, maybe.
I'm pretty sure he did. Grim was like ripped in half.
Yeah, so I don't really understand what drives Dr. Mambo to do what he does, but oh, geez. I don't really have a whole lot to say on Jeff outside of the dude looks like he's on his way to like an Andy Warhol convention. Just with his hair and the glasses and that sweater. It's very weird. And like I said, it's weird to picture all of these people together at the same time. And then
Yeah.
especially him, he stands out, but he's your um you have this just kind of asshole dude, I think, in every
Yeah.
group that's kind of really just out for himself. I mean, like Bert's an asshole, but this dude's just it's a different type of selfish asshole with
Oh,
this guy.
I am totally team Jeff, honestly. Like he starts doing things real quick that are super smart. He's like, everybody who's sick needs to get the fuck out. I'm gonna breathe through this shirt for the rest of the time. He's wearing a mask. And when he leaves, he grabs the beer specifically. He grabs bottled beverages that nobody else has had their mouths on or like any bodily fluids in. So shout out to Jeff for being the selfish asshole because it would have paid off for him in the end. And I love the like anal play representation there.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
let
So
people
that's
enjoy
fun.
whatever they want to
Yeah,
enjoy,
exactly. For all the fucking like gay like homophobic shit that they throw around in this movie, like they at least give like, you know, straight boys can like anal play too. Shout out to Jeff.
Shout out to Jeff. Um, of course, like you knew, like he was gonna die at the end. When he
Yeah.
starts being like, "I made it, I made it, I
I love
made it,"
it.
and I'm like, "Bro, you did not make it until you were like back in like a
Home
civilized town or home,
in a
and
hospital being tested for whatever that is.
the clean bill of health. You did not
Yeah.
make it. Why would you go back into that cabin with
Mm-mm.
seeing all that blood and all these dead
Mm-mm.
bodies everywhere?" But yeah, him just saying, "I made it, I made it." And I was like, the second he's gonna walk outside, something's gonna happen. And of course, he gets, shot to death by the police.
It's a good
So
though. It looks good, him getting shot.
yeah, it's pretty
I
good.
love
He
it.
does good convulsing. Good,
Yeah.
good job, right? And then we got Bert, fucking Bert,
Oh God, Bert.
who's just again just psychotic from the fucking beginning, where you're just like, why? It's
Yes.
like when they show up at the beginning of the movie and stop by that store, he's acting like an asshole. He steals a fucking Snickers bar just to be like a
And
fuck.
they bought a bunch of stuff. Just throw the Snickers bar on top of the beer. Like it's an
Yeah,
extra dollar.
just such an asshole. And then goes and wants to start shooting squirrels and shit. Like, anyone who is just immediately drawn to like hurting animals, you're like,
Yeah,
who the
because they're
fuck is this
gay.
guy? Yeah.
He says that because the squirrels are gay. Like,
uh,
okay, I
I
wrote down
hate
like a
this.
nice list of why Bert is the absolute worst. And do we even really need him in the movie? Like, did we need him? Oh, because he
Just
shoots the
to
guy, so he does make the plot move forward. So there's that. So he steals the Snickers. He's watching Jeff and Marcy with binoculars in the window while they're like ready to start having sex. He's running around with a gun trying to shoot squirrels, gay squirrels, and starts and accidentally shoots a guy. He lights a fire next to the cabin and leaves it behind. What? What? Then he calls Marcy a fucking slut. He calls Karen a fucking bitch. He tells a story of masturbation and a little bit of bestiality. And
mm,
then he's super insightful about Karen and Paul's relationship.
insightful is a stretch. You're giving him a lot. I think just because it's
I
so
know.
outside the realm of like your knowledge of him up to this point as a fucking
Yes.
toddler.
Yes. So
Yeah.
Bert is the worst. And I wish he would have gotten a worse death.
Yeah, they try to like redeem him at the end, like, he knowing he was going to die, like right there at the front door when the cops try to make their way in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah, fuck Bert. He's done.
Yeah.
It's so weird because he was just so weird about not wanting to touch anybody, but then like would like I don't know, everybody's with their mouths open talking and shit while they're cleaning out the inside of the truck after
Yeah,
like
like cover your faces.
after it's been like just all spit and blood everywhere all over the place. Just Jesus
Mm-hmm.
Christ. Ugh. Um,
Oh yeah, he gets bit by Dennis. That's the or after he's already sick.
well, and that's what gets Dennis sick.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to Dennis in a minute. I feel like I should touch on Henry because Henry is the first character we do see in this movie.
Hmm.
Either immediately before or immediately after the credits roll. Um, the first thing is this fucking dog death you see in this movie. I'll be honest with
Yeah.
you, this movie, I am so tempted to take at least half a boo off for every single dog death. And there's at least two. So I'm
Well, you
just going
don't
to,
see the first dog die. It's
and it's
already
not so
dead.
bad. And it's not so bad because it's like clearly like a stuffed animal dog, but it
Oh
is.
yeah. It looks so fake.
And when like Henry just like opens him up like a book, essentially, it's just like all the, it just looks like everything's just liquefied inside him.
And any idiot could tell that dog was dead. Like
He
he's
just keeps
like,
waving the
"Hey,
rabbit
what's
around his
wrong?
face.
What's wrong?" Yeah. And you're like, that dog is dead. Very clearly dead.
And then, of course, I do love blood spurts. So anytime
Yeah.
that happens to anybody, I'm all about it.
It's fun how often that happens in this movie.
When people get infected, first it's just some coughs, and then it's just like, just fucking just splattering projectile,
Oh,
vomiting blood on people. I love it.
that's a worse fear type of thing for me. Have you ever coughed up blood, like a significant amount of blood?
No, have you?
No, I
Ugh.
it scares the shit out of me. So that's the other thing about this movie, like just seeing people like cough up blood to that extent is terrifying to me.
I'd almost feel bad for Henry, but he just needs to communicate better, you know?
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
it's bad.
does it start eating away at your brain too? Because I feel like as soon as people get sick, their communication skills just really decline.
I would not be surprised if your brain starts to rot too, right?
Yeah.
I
Mm.
don't know. Um, I hope y'all don't mind that we're going through characters. I just feel like the plot itself is everyone starts getting sick. Okay, everyone starts
Mm-hmm.
turning on each other. But
Mm-hmm.
again, just like it's the characters that make this.
Just the way that they react to things and they're what they think is the logical next step never is. They make such terrible decisions. Like going back to Paul, I forgot to mention this. When he finds Henry's body in the reservoir, like, why are you on that ladder? Why are you poking the body? We know he's dead. He's burnt to a crisp and he's like face down in the water.
Well, and that's why I feel like along with the music and the setting and the quirky characters and the way people react to anything, again, that's why I'm like, I guess getting these Twin Peaks, David Lynch undertones a little bit because also you just shared an example of like, how you're in a dream and sometimes it's like horrifying and sometimes people just react super weird and then it's like this
Hmm.
like goofy comedy and then nobody acts the way that they should, or you see a body like maybe in a dream like I do go down the ladder and keep poking it and fall in or whatever,
Yeah,
whereas like
because
in
you
real
do
life I'd be
illogical
like,
things.
yeah. So I feel like it especially lends itself more to that comparison, but
Mhm.
these we'll get through these side characters real quick. Probably the most famous of which being Dennis, who loves pancakes and karate. I don't blame Dennis. Don't just go up and just sit next to a child and like insert
No,
yourself into its situation. Children are unpredictable. They will bite at any moment.
that's
Like, don't
that's
just
like
show
your
up on them.
worst. That's your. That's not even your worst case scenario. Like if my child was sitting on a bench by himself and a grown man just
It's a
decided to
stranger.
sit down next to him and start talking to him, that's weird. Like you don't do that. You don't do that at all. So, I mean, yes, Dennis shouldn't have bit him, but I do like that that Jeff says you should put a sign up or Bert says you should put a sign up and then when they next go to the general store when they cut back to it there's a sign that says do not sit next to Dennis.
I know, I love that.
I thought that was a pretty good joke.
Sadly, though, Dennis, as they say, you die by what you live by.
Yeah.
Um, and biting Bert is now his undoing because then he gets it. You see him in the hospital at the end. And then I think he comes back at the end, that weird, like, kind of
Little
town sing
jamboree.
along part jamboree at the end. I can't remember. Um, it'd be so weird. But yeah, I don't know. He's fine. He's weird. Sure.
Hmm.
And then the
Terrible
rest of the
haircut.
family. Yeah. The rest of that family, of course, you've got the that unfortunate old man who's still pretty funny and pretty charming.
I
Like,
I love the old man up until he says the N word. Like everything that he says is so cute and fun when he's talking about like the fox urine
yeah.
and like all of that. Like and just the way that like his cute little accent. I think he's adorable.
I'm sorry, just a message to white people. There's never, no, just there's never an okay time to say that word. I'm sorry.
No, there's never an okay context. Like even Jeff like repeats him and says like did he just say and says the actual word and then Marcy's like just say the N word like when you're saying it back. Like why would you say it again? So they at least knew that was not okay. Some of them.
And and maybe it's unfair for me to say because I don't know them personally, but Eli Roth just seems like the type of guy who would argue at a party where sometimes it's okay to say it.
Oh, for
You know what
sure
I
he
mean?
would. Yes, that's
Uh,
what I'm talking about though. Like for as much as I appreciate a lot of things that Eli Roth has created, I feel like if I was in a room with him, I would just be like, shut the fuck up. Because when I listen to his interviews, even, I get frustrated when I hear him talk, unless he's sharing horror movie knowledge. That's the only time he doesn't annoy me. I find him to just be, he seems very pretentious, very full of himself, very like pat himself on the back for everything that he does. Um, but I can't deny when I see that he's like created something, I'll watch it. He gets my butt in a seat.
how about this fucking butcher lady? Again, all
I
this
love her.
unnecessary yelling, and then it's like, well, why did you just say so? Here, we'll
I love her. I love her too.
just cutting up that hog that's clearly not looking good in the insides.
Yeah, it
Oh,
the color looks weird. They did a good job at that. Like that's a good effect. It looked sickly. Um,
it's not how you properly butcher a hog. You usually don't you slit their throats and let the blood out first, usually?
I think she knew that it was sick already and was just like
Just
angrily
pissed.
like tearing it open and being like, "Yep, this one's fucking sick too." I do like
Uh,
when they go inside though to, use the radio and they see the picture of Henry. It reminds me of I Know What You Did Last Summer when when Julie and Helen go to Missy's and are just so suspicious and saying all the wrong things. But they do another like good comedic beat is when they're running out of the house and they're like, oh my God, we burned Henry. And they're like jogging out.
yeah, no,
I like that little bit there.
I thought it was pretty funny. Um, I don't feel the need necessarily to talk through all the police officers, but this deputy, who the fuck
Uh,
plays this guy?
I don't know. I couldn't find him on the. Could you find him on the cast list?
Where the dude just looks so familiar. Where is he from? And I'm sorry, who plays Deputy Winston.
Oh, Detroit Rock City. That's where I recognize him from. Have you seen that movie?
Oh my gosh, I couldn't tell you I saw Detroit Rock City once, and it was probably a year after it came out, maybe.
Yeah, me too. I enjoyed it though. But I remember him from that. And apparently he's in Never Been Kissed.
Also, a weird, creepy sexual assault movie.
Yes. That's a weird one. Um
Ugh, that
his
one's uncomfortable.
his character is just one that I don't understand at all. But there's also like a very clear musical shift when he is first talking to Paul when he's taking his report that he like writes down like two sentences or scribbles in that notebook and then just completely stops writing and starts talking about partying. And then from there, he never stops talking about partying. And I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't think I get the joke.
Yeah, he's just I could honestly I couldn't stop just staring uncomfortably at his fucking teeth. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, that's so bad. I was looking through. He is also a musician and has self-released quite a number of albums, at least 12 or
Oh,
15
oh wow.
here. Looking good for him.
Oh, he's also in Pleasantville. I love that movie.
I don't think I've actually ever seen Pleasantville. I know what you're talking about, though.
Paul Walker's in the movie.
I know you love Paul Walker.
Mhm.
So, are there any other characters that stand out that I forgot?
Oh, Eli Roth as Grim.
Right.
We
Well,
didn't talk about it. He doesn't
two
last
Eli
long.
Roth characters,
Yes, he's also the bald guy at the bowling alley
which
from the
felt
story.
like a very unnecessary bit in this. I don't want to say I didn't like it.
I kind of like it just because it's so strange and off-putting that they actually show it. It's kind of different.
Yeah.
Um, and like stuff like that makes me like this movie more. Like when it's just weird in that way.
I do like the double cameo to a point, only because it's immediately followed by Eli Roth playing Grimm, who
Yeah,
shows up. So
yeah.
like it was almost this idea of like any person who played the murderer in the bowling alley story should show up and play Grimm, just
Yes.
because this idea of like something threatening, something uncomfortable. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
liked that. And I with the Grimm character, the old me, Natalie, would have fucking hated Grimm if this dude showed up. I would not fucking be able to stand anything this dude said.
Yeah.
Even with the weed, I don't know. I mean, yeah, of course
It's a
I'd let him
lot of
hang
weed.
out, but and it was much harder to get in 2002. So it's and
That's what
good
I was
stuff too.
thinking. Like, yeah, like it wasn't as easy to get your hands on as it is now.
But I think now, like I've matured a bit. My perspectives have changed. I feel like a guy like Grimm, I'm like, you know what, man, you're living your best life, dude. You're just being
Yeah.
friendly and kind.
Yeah.
Sure, you're a little off-putting or whatever, but I mean, I don't know. I can be a little off-putting too sometimes, but
Hmm.
people have taken me in. So, hey.
Yeah. Grim feels like the type of guy that's actually just a big fucking dork who has no friends.
Yeah.
And he just finds ways to like make himself appear cool. Like he's like saying, like, oh, like that's my skate name. And like, just has a bunch of weed with him because he's like, this is an easy way to make friends and it pays off.
Yeah.
So, I think he's trying his best.
Yeah. So I really do feel for him in
And he
this
doesn't
one.
know how to train his poor dog. So there's that.
Well, that's you need to figure out a way to trade Dr. Mambo if he was going to try to eat people from the get-go.
Yeah, no, I don't think Dr. Mambo needed any motivation to eat anybody.
So I've talked a little bit about some of the ways people die in this movie, but maybe let's take a little bit of a pause and dive into the deaths.
Hmm.
Now, 19 humans die in this movie.
Holy shit, really?
Yeah, thanks, internet. I don't remember counting that many, but sure,
Yeah.
internet. And then also we got a few dogs. We also have like a goat or a deer. Yeah, I think it was a deer.
Oh yeah, the deer. Yeah,
That
that's
was
also really campy. That
yeah.
deer coming through the car window.
Yeah, lots of deer like in the headlights getting kicked around and stuff in 2002. I wonder if it was the same deer that starred in the Queens of the Stone Age video. No one knows.
Probably.
Yeah,
How
I
many
think so.
famous deer are there?
Exactly.
Bambi, this
Yeah.
one.
Getting work on that same time. So you never know. Um, like I said before, no one technically, well, we don't exactly know with Paul, but we don't see anybody die from the disease itself. Usually it's you got to
Hmm.
be eaten by a dog or you're shot, or you're getting your skull beaten in. Um,
Mhm.
So I don't know. Any deaths that stand out to you, or deaths that you wanted to see more from?
I think they did a really good job of showing the deaths in the way I would want to see them. Like everything's very up close, very gory, very gross. It would have been nice to see how Paul died, but I also appreciate that we already saw so many people die that we didn't really need to. Karen, I think, is my favorite death because it's the most prolonged, and she probably was the closest to dying from this ailment.
Yeah.
But the fact that she, like, if you think about when she started to get sick, because she drank the water like right after they light Henry on fire, pretty much that next morning. And then she gets sleepy. It progresses really slowly for her, which I think is super fun. And I'm like, how long would it have taken, do we think? Took her like a day to get that bad.
Oh, yeah. It's
Less than 2 days, probably.
I couldn't imagine, especially when you already have like flies and bugs and shit and
Mhm.
maggots and stuff. Oh,
Oh, so nasty. So I love the makeup that they did on her. I think it looks really good. Her face looks so scary.
oh.
Like that's nightmare fuel for sure. How
At
about
the end of
you?
the, I probably I'm gonna say Marcy's because you get the leg shaving scene
Mm.
into, like I said, you have a nice robe and nice look with the blood coming down, all of that.
Hmm.
And Dr. Mambo, yes, should not be eating people, but at least a dog was fed.
Yeah, but it might kill
And
him.
true, I think he was already on his way out.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then him and just eating fucking inside of Karen while Karen's still alive. Oh, that's
Oh.
rough. Dr. Mambo, stop it.
Yeah, gross.
Bad boy.
That is not that's
Yeah,
cat behavior, honestly. Like
that is cat behavior. Maybe that's
like
what
I love
happens.
cats, but that is much more cat behavior than dog behavior.
And you do get to see the pieces of her
That's fun.
afterwards.
I love the
So
foot with her little flip-flop.
I love a foot when it's still got the shoe on it.
Uh-huh.
I love it.
We've talked about this before.
There's a couple different episodes. Check them out. Um, because gosh, man, it looks like a fucking bear came through that place. Like the way, like
Yeah.
how it just got torn the fuck apart. She was, oh, that's terrible.
So maybe Dr. Mambo was already just a fresh dog. He had a fresh
Yeah.
attitude. We saw that. And then after he eats Grim and is infected, maybe that then makes like animals more like vicious. And so before he starts, decaying from the outside or inside, however it works, he's just going on a rampage.
If I had a second favorite death, um, I was talking earlier about how Paul then kind of takes the place of Henry, when Paul is who you think is the last survivor of the main group.
Hmm.
Um, so you've given up on Jeff at this
Oh,
point.
I know who you're gonna say.
Is when he comes across this other group of campers, like
Hmm.
teenagers out drinking. The deputy
Hmm.
is there. Deputy Winston's like, "Oh fuck, yo, yeah, I did say I'd get that tow truck for you," and then makes up that bullshit thing.
Yeah,
And then, of course, then Paul just starts spitting up blood everywhere.
I love it.
Oh my gosh! But the the chaos that ensues, the probably the dude with the harmonica.
I knew it. Because he
Um,
swallows the harmonica.
that's
It's
so
like
dumb.
shoved down his throat.
There's no way that would work.
Yeah.
Him getting hit with the guitar as he's playing his harmonica. And I do love that he's playing it like even as like all the shit's like this
Yeah.
dude's coming up in blood
That's
and
what he
he's just like
gets.
boop boop. And then gets hit in the face with the guitar as they're trying to stop Paul. Somehow he swallows the harmonica like lengthwise. And then it
Mhm.
is pretty funny. Every time he tries to breathe, you just hear the
You can
hee
hear
haw,
it.
hee haw. It's pretty good. So I
It's
do like
fun.
that one.
And I enjoy Paul's like killing spree where he's just going
Yeah.
around killing everybody. I do wonder though why he didn't just shoot Karen instead of beating her with the shovel and just like all the blood like going in his face. Oh,
Yeah. Oh,
because he had the rifle. Maybe he just wanted to save the ammo for an actual like threat.
suppose so, yeah.
Yeah.
Other thing too at the end, when Paul you find is like dumped in the water and just like around the creek or whatever, you've got the kids getting the water for their lemonade stand.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And then everyone's of
That's
course
very
drinking
fun.
the lemonade and having it at the outside the store and then later at their little
Mhm.
jamboree. Um, there is very, very, very nice children that hang out on the corner from my house. And in the summer, they will have a lemonade stand, and they did this
Hmm.
once in a while. And like hey, I want to be a nice neighbor. So I bought lemonade from them before.
Mhm.
I would never drink a fucking drop of
Nope.
that lemonade. Absolutely not.
No.
I'm like,
You
oh,
never
thank
drink
you.
it.
And then I walk around the corner and I just pour
Yeah,
that
and then you
shit
pour
out.
it out. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
everyone does that, or everyone should do that. Like,
yeah.
unless you were the adult that helped those children make that lemonade and you know where all the ingredients came from, do not drink things that children make without supervision or without your supervision. But also, like, definitely help them with, their little business. Like, pay for the lemonade, get the lemonade, but don't drink it. You can pretend to take a sip if you need to. I've gotten really good at pretending to take sips and bites of things.
Before we get into our last segments here, I'm curious, is there anything I forgot? And then if you can just share overall, so what works for you in this movie and what doesn't work as much?
Okay, so something we didn't discuss, I'll start there. And this is something I didn't think about until this watch. And I've seen this movie a lot. I think I've seen this movie at least 10 times, like probably minimum. I think I watch it maybe once every other year. I really enjoy it. Um, it's a comfort movie for me. Something I didn't think about till this watch is, does this start like in, so if you're digesting the water and that's what's bringing on the infection, is it starting in your stomach or like is it starting around their genitals? Because with Karen, the flesh eating part starts like in her inner thigh. Then when Bert starts noticing he's not feeling so great, like he lifts up his shirt and you see it like near his like pelvic bone area. So I thought that was kind of interesting because it does kind of give you like, you know, like passing, infections to people, kind of STI like feeling. But I was like, does it start down there? Is what's going on there?
Um, for some reason, I think I remember it was the same thing with Paul's character too,
Yeah,
and also him pouring Listerine on his dick. It did
I
no
love
good.
that. I love that he pours Listerine on his dick because, like, was there no rubbing alcohol that you could have used? Because that would have been probably better than the Listerine.
Oh, yeah, probably.
But also, ow.
Ow.
Yeah, that's gotta hurt. Like, they know that some of that went into his pee hole.
Well, I think it needed to.
I know, but the mintiness, oh, the menthol, you don't want that in your pee hole.
The menthol, and then like I don't know. I feel like they add sugar to that, like Listerine. I just do rubbing alcohol, but even then, oh,
I love
I
that
don't
you're
think I
more afraid
could.
of the sugar than the mint.
Yeah, I love mint, and it just smell nice and
Not,
pepperminty. That's
not,
okay.
not for your pee hole.
Yeah, no, that's
Gosh.
terrible.
Yeah, that was the only thing that I had on my list of things to talk about that we didn't. Um okay, what works for me with this movie? Obviously, the body horror is a big one. Anytime people are falling apart, looking gross, I'm into it. It scares the shit out of me. I love that like feeling of like squirminess that it gives me. So, no matter how many times I've watched this, I still get grossed out when I watch this. I can't eat while I watch it. I love that. I think the acting is pretty fun, actually. I think everybody does a pretty decent job, maybe except for Eli Roth. Like he always is kind of like, cheesing it up. But I think the acting is pretty fun. I I like whatever the tone of this movie is. I can't describe it. It's kind of funny, it's kind of not. The characters are shitty and I love it. Like there's just something about it that really really works for me all around. So, it's not a perfect movie, but I do really enjoy it. What do you like about this movie?
Again, I think watching it now, like I like the detached realism,
Mm-hmm.
a lack of realism, I guess, in this movie. I think looking at it from that lens, nothing needs to like make sense because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like now, like maybe like Eli Roth is making this movie like with no intention of any of this being like relatable or
Yeah.
sometimes being easy to follow, like all you
Yeah.
know is that this chaos is happening and there's a dude in a rabbit suit. Like, okay, there's
Yeah.
so that ultimately does work for me. I like the body horror, of course. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think probably could have cut out that whole scene with Paul being a peeping Tom because that doesn't really amount to
Mm-hmm.
much if I remember. I don't think we see those people anymore unless they
No,
show up at
you
like the jamboree at the end or something.
Oh, another thing I forgot that works for me with this movie. I think it's mostly the third act that you really notice it when Paul is like running around. I really enjoy the music. Like that's when it really kicks up for me. I enjoy definitely enjoy the last like maybe 20 or 30 minutes of the score. And okay, one other thing that I really like about it is it feels hopeless from the beginning for them. Like as soon as that like when that guy is on fire, you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this isn't going to go well for them." But once Karen gets sick and like they you feel like they kind of already know that they're all going to die and they're
Yeah.
just in denial. So I do like that feeling and I like that there's no survivors from the group. And then obviously the things that don't work for me are just the early 2000s of it all with the outdated offensive language. The sexual assault part of it just makes me think that Paul is a piece of shit, but it's definitely not necessary to the movie. So in the remake, they have pretty much the same scene, but she's very much awake. And like
That's better.
they're making out. Like they're going for it. So that's a totally different angle of that. So just those outdated things bother me. But other than that, like I appreciate all the weirdness of it.
Looking through some of the reviews, that the clash of tone didn't seem to work for a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately, it's a horror comedy and I think I liked it overall. Like I mean, it's weird, not pudding doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Isn't like a straightforward like horror comedy, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately it's fine. It's weird, it's offbeat. I can't say I complain a whole lot.
Yeah.
Or I can't say I can complain a whole lot.
If you want to see this movie with a steady tone, you can watch the remake and see how shit that is. Because when you give it a somber, serious tone, it does not work at all.
I was looking through some of the awards. I'll probably just stick with the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards if you don't mind.
Oh,
It
yeah, go for it.
it got a few, and then also, yeah, just a nice little snapshot into 2002, seeing what everybody was up
Mm.
to. I don't think it won any of these. Best makeup creature effects. It was nominated along with House of a Thousand Corpses, 28
Who
Days Later, and
won?
Jeep. Freddy vs. Jason. Can you believe that?
That's that's whack.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? It did win best score, and I think it was
Oh,
because of our boy Angelo
yeah.
put it up. Let's see. Screenplay. Gosh, I also, do you remember Bubba Hotep with Bruce
Uh-huh.
Campbell?
Yeah.
That came out that year too. So that was nominated for a bunch of
Ah,
stuff
okay.
too. So that's pretty fun. So it's funny because the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards, it was nominated for Best Wide Release Horror Film, but it
Hmm.
was also nominated for Worst Film as well, which ultimately
Oh,
went to House of the Dead, which
that
I don't
what
blame it. Yeah.
it's really bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So dang. Before we go into our boost scores, I'd love to hear some taglines.
This one has, I think, two good taglines. Short and sweet, and
Two good
just two. Just
taglines.
two. They only
Oh,
there's
okay.
only two, and I think they're both fun.
Oh, okay.
So you got Cabin Fever, Catch It.
Okay,
I
that's
like that
good.
one. I think that's fun.
Yeah.
And then Terror in the Flesh.
Also good. Because
Yeah,
it's about
those
fleshy
are both
stuff.
good. Yeah, they're both good taglines. So I was happy about that. I don't want to say that helps my boo score when there's a good taglines, but it definitely gives me like a little pep in my step.
Well, all right. Hit me with it then. What's your boost score?
Okay, like I said, I've seen this movie a lot. I can't really put my finger on why I love it so much, but I acknowledge that it's not a perfect movie and I wouldn't recommend it to many people. I would really exclusively recommend this to people who are like, "Oh, I love gross body horror. Like I love seeing that kind of shit." Like us. So I give it 3 boos.
I agree with you. Three was going to be my boost score.
Nice.
Um, I decided about halfway through this conversation. It is better than I remembered. And
Mm-hmm.
I tend to shit on Eli Roth a little bit. At least I did in our Thanksgiving episode. Even though I will sorry, let me back up. I will say Thanksgiving is still his best movie,
I still
technically.
disagree.
But what do you think it's this?
It's either this for me or Hostel 2.
Yeah, you're one of those weirdos that like Hostel too.
I like Hostel 2 a lot.
Okay, whatever.
But I don't watch that one as often. Like I've only seen it maybe 3 times. So I would say I think this is my favorite of his. Doesn't mean it's his best, but I will say I think it's my favorite for sure.
I do agree that I would not just recommend this openly to anyone that's just
Hmm.
oh, I like spooky movies. I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, go watch Cabin Fever. I think I'd have to learn about somebody a little bit more and see what if they're willing to work with some stuff. And then also, like, there are a lot of triggers. There are a lot of slurs in this movie. There is
Hmm.
sexual assault in this movie. There is a lot of dog death in this movie. So,
You need to
you know,
know your person before you recommend it. I
yeah.
I usually, if like people say like, "Oh, I'll watch anything," I'll give them those warnings if I say like, "Okay, but there are these things in this movie, but other than that, it's a good time."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang, that's all I got. You got anything else?
No, that's it. Oh, wait, I do have one more thing
All right.
because I'm feeling real hyped right now. Something else that I think they could have done differently that would have made this movie better, in my opinion. I think the water reveal was too early. I would have liked to see that a little bit later in the film. Because as an audience, we know that it's the water really early and they don't. I think it would have made it more fun had you looked back and like saw all the little hints of like how often Karen is taking a sip of water, when Bert finally takes a sip of water, the contest of just drinking beer the whole time, like why that is relevant to how long it took them to get sick. I think those things would have been like a fun, like, oh shit, like later on in the movie if they would have just waited maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I hear you. Because I think either way, I'd be watching that movie and be like, do not drink that fucking glass of water. Do not
Yeah.
do that. Like, even just because you're at a cabin, don't do it.
Yes. Don't do it.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
That's the only other thing.
Yeah. Well, dang. Okay, we did it.
Hmm.
Just fucking yeah. Just stay out of cabins. I don't know.
Stay out of
Don't
cabins.
don't drink
That way you
tap
don't,
water.
yeah, don't drink tap water anywhere. I don't care if it's your house. Like,
Yeah.
we were all drinking out of hoses as kids. Like,
Oh,
shouldn't have been doing that.
gross.
Yeah, don't do it. You don't know. And even if it's not the water, maybe it's the pipes. But
100%.
yeah, just no. Filter that shit.
Take care, everybody. Three, two, one, ghost.
Thanks for listening to our episode on cabin fever. If you've got a fever for more 321 Ghost, you can subscribe to our podcast and leave us a killer review on whichever platform you choose to listen. You can find us on Instagram at 321 Ghost Pod and give us a follow. We would love to hear from you in the comments. You can shoot an email to 321ghostpod@gmail.com to share any thoughts, questions, or recommend a movie you'd like to hear us chat about. Next week, we're wrapping up the month with 1997's Anaconda. Thanks again for listening, and remember, if someone tells you not to use a condom because they're healthy while a flesh-eating virus is about, it's not worth the lay. 3, 2, 1, ghost.